In San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, Amazon confirms what we already knew, that it's splitting its second headquarters between New York and Virginia. Why some are excited and others are calling it a bait and switch. Plus, PayPal co-founder Max Levchin joins us to talk about how he's rebranding his new company, Affirm, in hopes of becoming a household name and betting big on travel. And curbing tax conduct, Airbnb is the latest company to end forced arbitration for not just sexual harassment, but also discrimination. Will it be enough to keep employees across Silicon Valley happy? But first, to our top story, it is official. After 14 months, Amazon has whittled down 238 locations to 2. Amazon has officially confirmed it's opening 2 new headquarters, one in Long Island City, New York, the other in Arlington, Virginia. That's been confirmed as of Tuesday. Plus, Nashville will become the so-called Operation Center of Excellence with more than 5,000 new jobs. We caught up with Amazon Senior Vice President Jay Carney and talked to him about the plans.
These will be co-equal headquarters. We'll have shareholders meetings in these headquarters. We'll have board of directors meetings. We'll have our all-hands meetings, our employee meetings in New York and the D.C. area, just like we have them now in Seattle. So, he'll move around. The rest of leadership will move around, and then as these new headquarters grow, we'll have senior leaders based in each of these locations. I'm on the leadership team. I live in Washington, D.C. right now. I come back and forth to Seattle. I'll be going up to New York a lot now, which I'm excited about. So, we're a Seattle-based company right now, but we long ago became more than just Seattle. We have employees in 46 states. We have 18 tech centers across the country employing 20,000 people. We've invested over $160 billion in the U.S. alone in just the last 7 years. As you know, we hire a lot of folks and we pay up and down the income scale. And these jobs will be high-paying and I think bring a lot of positive benefits to New York and D.C.
Jay, how do you feel about the backlash that Amazon took advantage of cities and got useful data in return, or that a company of your size doesn't deserve such big tax incentives?
Well, I'd say two things. First, on the question around data. The data we used were based on about 100 different metrics that are all publicly available about education and housing and transportation and the like. This is information that cities readily provide to any potential investor, or that you can find in surveys and other bits of research if you're looking to invest. And that process helped us make our decision, and it should help other companies as they look to invest make decisions. One of the things that we learned through this process is that there are some great places that may not have been the right place for us to create 50,000 or 25,000 jobs, but great cities across the United States and North America that are very appealing places for tech investment. We, even in this process, have announced over 6,000 jobs in cities that were competing, that were in among the 20 finalists, but weren't selected for HQ2. Cities like Vancouver in Canada, San Diego in California, and Birmingham in Alabama. So, we think that this process has been positive for us, obviously, but also for the cities that were chosen and the cities that weren't. One thing that's unique about this is that we're planning in advance for this growth. Instead of growing organically like we did in Seattle, Amazon started in a garage, and now we have more than 45,000 employees here. We are working ahead of time with New York, with Virginia, to make sure that this growth has a positive effect on those communities.
That was Amazon Senior Vice President Jay Carney there. Now to talk more about Amazon's decision to split its second headquarters in 2 between New York and Virginia, I want to bring in Open Markets Institute Executive Director Barry Lin, who joins us from Washington, also with us in New York. Bloomberg Opinion's Shira Ovide. Shira, I'll start with you. Now that the suspense is over, who do you think the real winners are here?
Well, I think Amazon is a big winner, right? That they made this selection process highly public. And so it generated kind of a year of free publicity, both nationally and in each of these cities in which Amazon was, or in each of these cities that was vying for the location of HQ2, places like Birmingham and Calgary, Alberta, and places like that. So I think Amazon is probably the biggest winner here.
Now, Barry, I know you're a skeptic about this. I mean, do you think that Amazon took advantage of cities in this process?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, as we were just talking about, Amazon got an immense amount of data from cities all across this country. And it's not just publicly available data. This is the data about what kind of deals will these tax deals, tax breaks, subsidies, will these administrations put forth in order to lure in investment by Amazon. So that's a lot of this information was entirely secret. It's available to no other company. And in terms, so Amazon is, as was just mentioned, was a huge winner in this. And this is it's a general problem across the country in terms of how we treat large companies.
Well, Shira, what did you think of Jay Carney's response to that? I mean, as a company this big that is creating this many jobs, shouldn't they be getting these tax breaks? And if the data is available to all, couldn't it be useful?
Well, I think Barry's point is right that Amazon was in rooms and secret negotiations with municipal economic development authorities, so it does have a good sense now of what those cities and states are willing to offer Amazon. And remember, this is a company that has 600,000 plus employees. It operates warehouses and data centers and other facilities in just about every state in the U.S. and also around the world. And so it needs to have information to figure out what are the best places to put our growing demand for warehouses and white-collar offices and data centers and places like that. So, Jay Carney is right, but also it doesn't tell you the whole story about what Amazon got out of this process.
So, Barry, looking out, this is, Amazon has said this process is going to take 2 decades. 2 decades from now, how do you think this will change Arlington, Virginia, and Long Island City?
Well, I think the issue is how it changes these places today. I mean, what it reveals is that officials in Long Island City and New York City and in Virginia, both at the local and the state level, are willing to give away a whole lot for not that much. I mean, we have to remember that they were originally promised the whole deal. They were promised the whole headquarters, the whole second headquarters, the whole HQ2. And in each case, they got at best half of it, and actually it looks like it's going to be less than half of it given some of these other investments that have been revealed. So what we see, if you're a taxpayer, if you're a citizen in New York City, if you're a citizen in Northern Virginia, you just say, hey, what did my officials, what did my mayor and my governor just give away? Because it's like these subsidies, these tax breaks, that's my money.
At the same time, Shira, you have Google talking about expanding its presence in New York, but not getting all of this fanfare. Is that fair? Yeah, and interesting, I think Google also said that it hasn't applied for some of the tax subsidies that Amazon maybe has gotten, although Google's mostly in Manhattan and Amazon's coming to Queens, so there's a little bit of a difference there. But look, just to be a little bit fair to Amazon, right, economic development is a little bit of a controversial process, right, particularly this idea of giving tax breaks to already affluent companies like Amazon for high-paying jobs that, look, are good for a city, but that also have the potential to make income inequality even worse in expensive cities like the Washington, D.C. area and New York City. So it's always kind of a give and take of benefits and drawbacks when you are luring high-profile employers like Amazon to a place that has a large workforce but also a high cost base. Right, and you certainly do have some state legislators very excited about this. Shira Ovide, Bloomberg Opinion, Barry Lynn, Open Markets Institute Executive Director. Thank you both for weighing in. Coming up, Max Levchin's Affirm is struggling to become a household name. Will rebranding the business and focusing on travel change that? We'll talk to him next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio, listen on the Bloomberg app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. PayPal co-founder Max Levchin has built Affirm, a $1.8 billion business, by offering installment plans to U.S. consumers. The problem? Most shoppers have no idea they're using his company when they choose how to pay at checkout. Now, in an effort to make its name synonymous with online installment plans, Affirm is rebranding. Besides a new logo, the firm will list all the retailers it works with on its website and focus more on travel, letting consumers pay for vacations over time. Max Levchin joins me here in the studio now. Also with us, we've got Bloomberg Tech's Julie Verhage. Max, why now?
We're ready. We've spent an enormous amount of time and a huge, massive multi-team, multi-month effort to really hone down on what is our brand promise, what is our story, what is the look of Affirm going to be. And it so happens that as we go into the mad rush of the Christmas sales, we will see the largest number of customers yet, and we want them to meet the new Affirm.
Now, you have really interesting insights into consumer behavior in the middle of, a changing economy, interest rates going up, a trade war, political uncertainty, historically low unemployment rate. What trends are you seeing in consumer behavior?
So I think the economy is still generally strong from our vantage point, and we see a slice of the economy extraordinarily well, which is consumer buying, but obviously not everything. So my opinions are colored by what I read in the news. But from our point of view, our customer, which is really just everyone in the U.S. So we serve everyone from the sort of a high-flying one percenters all the way to brand new college students with a lot of student loans. Every one of them generally seems to love our flavor of transparent and honest finance. They're generally still buying. They love the products that are launching for the Christmas season. People are gearing up to do their shopping. I think on the credit quality, we hear from large banks that they're starting to get a little bit more careful. They're reserving a little bit more for losses. In our experience, it has not been the case. From our point of view, the credit is still performing just as well, which only means that we are that much closer to the next recession, but who's to say when?
Max, one other thing you did on top of this relaunch is that you made a bigger push into travel, which is something that you guys got into in 2017, so not that long ago in terms of your 6-year history. What trends are you seeing there? Because traditionally, consumers don't like using credit to go pay for vacations to Hawaii, Florida, wherever they may be going.
So the reason we got into travel in the first place is because we started noticing that our buyers would associate some of the Affirm usage with their travel plans. They would be buying something that they plan to wear during a trip, or they would be booking a hotel, which we worked with online travel agencies for a very long time now. And so we started asking the question, well, can we bring these purchases together? Because ultimately, when you're going on a trip, you are probably going to use your credit card to shop, and you would like to have a very clear idea of how you're paying for the way of getting there and what you're bringing there with you and where you're staying. And so bundling it into a single product seemed like a really good idea, and we launched it with a few partners, and it immediately took off. The trends in travel we're seeing is that the younger customers, so Affirm generally skews younger, something like 67% of our borrowers are millennial. The rumors are true. They prioritize experiences over possessions. A huge number of conversations we have with our buyers, we learn that they want to go to more places, they want to experience more things. We're there to help them with that.
Cyber Monday, Black Friday coming up. How big are the holidays going to be for you, and how is it impacting the companies that you choose to work with?
So we work with both highly cyclic and completely acyclic merchants. So some of our partners in the retail space are battening the hatches, and they're getting ready, and they're stocking and making sure that everything is ready to go, while others are sort of yawning and saying, great, well, they're going to get all that traffic, and we're going to be there when they need to buy the things in January. And so we're certainly expecting another record Q4. We've grown extremely rapidly over the last 6 years. I think U.S. economy looks good to shop, and I think people are not going to stay home. But I think many merchants that we work with are actually getting ready to do their version of Cyber Friday in January. And so we don't get a reprieve. We have to ramp up for December and then for January.
Max, one other thing that you've talked about a lot when launching Affirm was that you guys have better data, better algorithms in terms of figuring out what consumers can afford and how to underwrite for them. I was looking through some bankruptcy filings, though, and in the last 30 days, around 350 people have filed for bankruptcy and listed Affirm as a creditor. Obviously, you've given out far more than 350 loans, but is there room for improvement on that, and what are you guys doing about that?
So the sad reality of human life is that bad things happen to good people. Our approach to underwriting is that if we don't believe you can handle this loan, we will not lend to you. We approach credit the same way we approach everything else, with sort of extreme black and whiteness. When we think it's right, we will be there to support you. When we think it's wrong, we will tell you you should not borrow money from us. Sadly, people have emergencies, from family emergencies to pet emergencies, and part of our promise is that we will be with our customers when that happens, and we'll stand behind them. And if they declare bankruptcy, we will very sadly let them have their bankruptcy and get out of their way, because that's what bankruptcy is for. I think our underwriting has proven to be excellent and has generally exceeded, I think, every industry metric where such things go. But it would be silly of me to say there's no room for improvement, because there always is. And every new loan, every new merchant, every new borrower, we learn a little bit more. I don't think we have so much better data as we have better processes and often better people when it comes to processing all kinds of data that comes in from our millions of borrowers.
All right, Max Levchin, CEO of Affirm, you're sticking with us. I want to ask you about some broader tech trends. Julie Verhage at Bloomberg Tech in New York. Thanks so much, Julie, for joining us quickly today. Well, falling out of love with tech, what's got investors fretting about the FANGs? We will discuss next. And Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out at Technology, and be sure to follow our Global Breaking News Network, TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg. Is love for the FANGs fading? Investors have cut allocations to tech stocks to the lowest since February 2009. That is according to the closely followed Bank of America Merrill Lynch Global Fund Manager Survey for November. Just a net 18% of those polled were overweight in the sector. So why are investors fretting over tech? Still with us to discuss, Affirm CEO Max Levchin. Of course, there are a lot of issues, Max: privacy issues, transparency issues, election meddling, fake news, Apple, deciding not to report unit sales for the iPhone. Do you think the concern about tech is overblown, or do you think there's something there, like this will be a prolonged low point?
No, I think, and I am first person to openly admit that I have no idea how public markets value tech stocks or any other kind of stocks. So you're getting it straight from someone who doesn't know anything about this stuff. But I think the tech run has been so strong for so long. Almost anything now causes public investors, especially ones that don't have a deep sort of a long-term holding thesis, to say, wait a second, maybe I should cash in. So I mean, you see this in a market where the jitters are kind of nonstop. Every day there are single-digit percentage movements up or down on your favorite tech stock. So my guess is that it's people who are kind of saying, look, I made a lot of money on this run, maybe I should get out.
I have this chart here in my GTV library showing the performance of the FANG stocks compared to the S&P, still outperforming the S&P, so perhaps something to that argument that maybe it's overblown, but definitely down from where tech stocks have been. Diving in more specifically, there's a lot of concern about Facebook and privacy, and if Facebook can continue to grow, and an overall feeling of sort of tech hate. There seems to be a lot of anxiety about tech and anger towards tech. Do you think that lasts?
I think it's the tech industries to address or to ignore at their own peril. I think a lot of the brands that have been built on this implicit notion of benevolence, technology to right all wrongs, have been managed to sort of course you trust us, of course you love us, we are here in your phone, on your screen, and it's not quite so rosy anymore, and you have to re-earn the trust. And so I think a lot of this is being completely transparent, telling the story, being there with your customers, telling them what you are and you're not doing for them and on their behalf. And I'm not completely convinced the tech companies have handled this extraordinarily well. I think there's a lot of examples where they reacted quickly and smartly. Google comes to mind, where they've been very responsive and sort of said, yep, we want to know what ails our employees and we want to respond to it quickly. I think a lot of the other companies have been a little bit more glib and said, it'll blow over. Perhaps at least the perception from the outside looking in was that maybe that's what it seems like to them. And so my guess is these are real concerns. I don't think any of them are unaddressable. One thing that's great about technology companies, they have technology, which means they have the leverage to address systemic problems with code as opposed to with more humans, but it's real work to do.
Do you think Facebook can keep growing as it has been, or will this sort of overall disenchantment with social networks sort of just change the course of growth that we have seen?
I think the thing that's very powerful about networks is network effects. So the fact that you might not like exactly how they're handling your private data doesn't change the fact that the baby pictures from your cousins and aunts are going to be there for most people. And so there's an enormous amount of retention that just comes with that territory, and they've done really, really well capitalizing on it. I think the disenchantment, if it's a lasting thing, is a very slow trend. On the flip side, I think Facebook already has maybe majority of people in the world, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's a lot of majority of people in the world who use such things is definitely true. And so I think their user growth is something that necessarily has to slow down. There are many markets where they're still not at all available, and so there are opportunities there. On the revenue side, I think there's probably growth to have for a long, long time.
What's your outlook on crypto, given the slide?
I've always been a crypto moderate, and it's hard to call me crypto skeptic. I love this stuff. I think it's fascinating technology. I think a lot of really interesting applications. I repeat this every time. It's not a good currency. You can't expect it to hold its value. You can't expect it to be there tomorrow. There's nonstop legal uncertainty. It's not a great commodity anymore. Or for a while, it was a commodity that could only go up in one direction, and for a time, it was a commodity that was going scarily in another direction. And now it seems to be kind of in unknown territory. In the long term, I think it's going to be quite valuable, but
so you buy it?
I don't, but I'm not a speculator. I think people who buy it today are speculating on it having another major run-up, and maybe they can get out in time, which is what people who bought it in January are probably thinking about. But no, I buy into the technology value that it brings. Unequivocally true. I've now seen more and more examples of kind of first cut at real-world application of blockchain and a little bit of cryptocurrency in it that makes me think, oh, it's not just a hammer looking for nails, but it still sort of is. And so as a pragmatist, I believe in what I can see as a useful thing as opposed to a great speculation. I mean, the tulip mania was a thing.
All right, Max Levchin, CEO of Affirm and co-founder of PayPal. Thank you so much for stopping by. Always great to have you here. Coming up, curbing tech's conduct. Google employees walked out and forced change. Now Airbnb is taking a step further, ending forced arbitration not just for sexual harassment cases, but also discrimination. We will discuss next. This is Bloomberg. Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. Last week, thousands of Google employees across the world walked out on the job, furious over the company paying out executives like Android creator Andy Rubin to quietly leave after credible allegations of sexual harassment against him. Rubin was given $90 million to walk away after allegedly forcing a subordinate into a sexual act. Google has since ended forced arbitration in such cases, and other tech companies are taking notice, like Facebook, which said they would do the same. And on Monday, Airbnb said it was ending forced arbitration, not just for sexual harassment, but all cases involving discrimination, which includes racial, gender, religious, and age inequity. Something my next guest says is a crucial missing piece in Google's new policies. To discuss, I'd like to bring in Jean Christensen in New York. She is a partner at the law firm Wigder, where she specializes in employment litigation. She's also currently suing Uber, Avon, and the hedge fund Point72 Asset Management over gender-related claims. So, Jean, you are the person to talk to. How significant do you think these changes are that Airbnb is making compared to what Google and Facebook have done here?
I think it's really important that companies like Airbnb are saying that they're eliminating arbitration for discrimination. Using that word instead of using the word sexual harassment and sexual assault is really important, because because oftentimes, hypothetically, you could have a female employee who happens to be of a minority or dark-skinned, and sexual harassment claims could be tied into racial claims. And so with a policy like Google's, you're left thinking, well, is she going to have to arbitrate race claims, but she's free to go to court about sexual harassment? It doesn't make any sense. It really needs to be all discrimination claims, because sexual harassment is just a component of gender discrimination.
Now, Ruth Porat, Alphabet CFO, Google's parent company, says she walked out with employees during the worldwide Google walkout. At the same time, the company has said they've fired 48 employees over the last couple of years for sexual harassment. They didn't get exit packages. But what they don't talk about is the culture that led to 48 people, engaging in some kind of bad behavior. Is 48 to you, for a company of that size, is that a lot?
It's still a lot. 48 is a lot anywhere, but the problem is that 48, that's what they're disclosing, that's what we know about. I, as a lawyer who practices in this area, has to think there could be a lot more than 48. And the culture that allows such conduct to exist in 48 cases, it's hard to say that that can't be happening company-wide. So it's a lot, but that's why arbitration is such a problem, because there's no transparency, and companies can hide if it's 4 employees, if it's 40, if it's 400, and that's what has to change.
Google isn't waiving anti-class action provisions. So my question is, how much do you think these changes, ending forced arbitration for sexual harassment cases solely, how much do you think that will actually change the company, change the culture? I mean, will it really prevent more of these things from happening, or do other things have to happen as well?
I think it's a start. It's certainly not the cure and the ultimate fix, but it is a start, because you need to empower female employees with the knowledge that if they do speak out, that they're going to be taken seriously, that they're going to be listened to, and that their claims are going to be investigated. And the best way to do that is to be transparent. And so by not keeping them in arbitration, you're giving women the ability to speak out and know that they will be heard.
I'm curious, with the rise of the Me Too movement, increasing reporting on these cases, the allegations of Christine Blasey Ford, are you hearing more women coming forward? Do you see, have you seen an explosion in the volume of cases that you're getting, the women that you're talking to?
I love this question, because I've been doing this a long time, and so it's always been there. The sexual harassment that the whole world seems to just be hearing about now has been going on for years, and it's the difference is that people are actually paying attention to the work that I do and other lawyers in this space. So the volume of cases or the number of women contacting us isn't really that different, but what is different is that people are listening. And I think that I think we're on the tip of the iceberg, and I say this over and over again, because many, many women are still very afraid to speak out about what has happened to them. And it's changing, but it's slow.
So you're expecting more women to come forward in the future? Is that what you mean by saying we're at the tip of the iceberg?
Definitely.
Now, I do want to ask you about one last story. The CEO of Flipkart, which is an e-commerce company that Walmart bought in India, key to their future e-commerce strategy, he has now stepped down for misconduct. How do you handle these cases when you're a global company operating in different countries with different laws and different cultures?
Well, at the end of the day, if you're a company that is transacting business in the United States, and you're going to be held accountable to what people think here is the correct standard. And I don't think people are willing to say, oh, I'm going to give so-and-so a pass just because they're operating in a different different country or a different culture. You know, here in Manhattan, we have people from countries all over the world, cultures all over the world, and we're still able to have one set of New York City anti-discrimination laws. And I think that's what has to apply.
All right, Gene Christensen, partner at Wigdor LLP, thank you so much. Blockchain startup Ripple is gaining new customers because financial firms are looking for faster, more up-to-date technology than the SWIFT banking network. That is what Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse told Bloomberg's Haslinda Amin on the sidelines of Singapore's FinTech Festival Tuesday. Take a listen.
You're seeing more and more institutional interest in the crypto space. Even recently, the parent company of the New York Stock Exchange, ICE, announced their crypto exchange that they plan to launch in December called Pact. You know, when I was here in Singapore a year ago at this same event, there were 30,000 people here. And this year there's 40,000 people. And it's part of that regulatory certainty. It's seeing the institutional interest from players like the parent company of the New York Stock Exchange. You've seen Fidelity in the United States make announcements about their interest. And even with it, Ripple, you know, last quarter we announced there was more institutional interest in it, people coming to us to buy XRP, that institutional buyer, than we'd ever had before in our history. And I think you're going to continue to see that grow. It'll be frankly exciting to have it come back next year and see, you know, how far we've come between now and a year from now.
How soon do you think, though?
Well, you know,
because
honestly,
regulators are different, all kinds of perspective.
And that is part of the challenge, right? You need a global framework, and you're seeing some countries really lean in and be progressive and provide that clarity. Here in Singapore, the MAS has been truly a leader. That's also true in Thailand, and even to some degree the Philippines and Japan. You know, other markets have been slower. Even in the United States, there's some lack of clarity, particularly around the SEC and, you know, some things they've announced around ICOs. But there's still work to be done on that. And I think until that clarity is there, it's hard for companies to invest in a big way. Now, to your point, I would have predicted 2018 was really the year of institutional adoption of crypto. You know, here we are in Q4, and I would say it has underachieved what I would have guessed would achieve this year, largely, I think, because of some of the regulatory uncertainty, and also in terms of custody solutions and really the ability from a security point of view support institutional adoption and usage of these crypto assets.
Brad, I'd like you to address some of the rumors circling around. I mean, there are indications that perhaps your biggest rival, SWIFT, will be joining you. Could you shed some light?
Well, look, you know, SWIFT is owned by the banks, and we are here to help the banks. You know, we feel like blockchain technologies are a massive step function forward in terms of how correspondent banking has historically worked. The technologies that banks use today that SWIFT developed, you know, decades ago, really hasn't evolved and kind of kept up with the market. And so we feel like we're here to help the banks. SWIFT is owned by the banks. There have been opportunities where maybe there's partnership opportunities. We haven't been able to bring those to fruition, but we're going to keep focusing on solving the customer problem. You know, SWIFT said not that long ago they didn't see blockchain as a solution to correspondent banking. You know, we've got well over 100 of their customers saying that they disagree.
So strictly internet rumors, yes? Just to
Strictly
clarify.
Rumors. You know, look, there's lots of rumors, and I'm hesitant to comment on any rumor because if you comment on the false rumors, then you have to comment on the true rumors, and so you just avoid all of them.
Is there a possibility that Ripple could take over SWIFT one day?
Well, I think what we're doing and executing on a day-by-day basis is, in fact, taking over SWIFT. In that, you know, we've now signed up, you know, well over 100 banks. Some of the largest SWIFT-enabled banks in the world are now using Ripple's technology. I mean, just last week we saw a remittance company who's using Ripple's technology. They reduced the price per transaction to their consumers from $20 per transaction to $2 per transaction, and they saw an 800% increase in usage overnight. That's the type of dynamic that SWIFT isn't able to support that we're able to address right now. And that's something we saw just in the last couple of weeks. So we certainly want to see banks succeed in this new world order and take advantage of these technologies. To the extent we can work with SWIFT to do that, then that's great.
Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse there with Bloomberg's Haslinda Amin. Coming up, taking the pledge. Countries and tech firms are signing on to an international cybersecurity pact. But why is the U.S. opting out? We find out next. This is Bloomberg. The U.S., China, Russia, Israel all said no. But Microsoft, Google, Samsung are some of the big tech companies saying yes. Just what are they disagreeing on? Signing up for the Paris Call for Trust and Security in cyberspace. It is a tech pledge led by French President Emmanuel Macron and is a reaction to the cyber wars that impact elections and feature attacks on businesses. Microsoft President Brad Smith threw his weight behind the pact, telling reporters that, quote, almost never does the world come together in a way that is global. There are stepping stones to a global consensus. It's especially important that the like-minded countries come together. To talk about this, let's go to Washington, where Jamil Jaffer is standing by. He is the founder of the National Security Institute at George Mason University. Before that, he served as senior counsel to the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence of the U.S. House of Representatives, where he led the committee's oversight of NSA surveillance. So, Jamil, this is a bunch of countries and some companies agreeing not to attack each other in cyberspace during peacetime. But if the U.S., China, Iran, North Korea, Israel, Russia aren't signing on, how much teeth does this actually have?
Well, look, Emily, part of the challenge here with the Paris Call is that it's a statement of principles. It's not really anything binding under international law. It's a sort of set of common things that these groups and these companies and these countries agreed to. And in a lot of ways, you know, a lot of it's motherhood and apple pie. Everyone agrees that these are positive things, things that are useful for the world and the community agreeing. But there are the details which are complicated and probably the reason why some of these major countries, include our allies like Australia, didn't sign on to.
So how is this actually going to work? And how will they actually make sure that, you know, the folks who've signed this are standing by their agreement?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of implementation left to go on. This isn't in an agreement in the sense of an international binding instrument. It's a statement of ideas and concepts that they've committed themselves to working towards. Of course, what's interesting about this accord is that the majority of signatories, you know, almost 200 plus of the 300 signatories, are universities, nonprofits, companies. They're not nation states. And so that makes this an interesting agreement or statement of principles, because it's not your typical participants in international affairs, and they're seeking to bind the classic participants, nation states.
What do you read into the U.S. opting out more specifically?
Well, I think part of it is, you know, there's a lot of the devil's the details here. And so we're talking about international law, international human rights law. The U.S. is typically very careful in this space and wants to define things, understand what they mean before we sign up to things that might bind us later on down the road. We've seen all sorts of documents be utilized in international litigation before the UN to say, look, you agreed to this, so you've got to stand by every single last word here, even though we didn't define what it meant. And the U.S. is usually very cautious in that space.
The U.S. midterm elections are over, though there are some votes still being counted. There are recounts happening in Florida, also outstanding decisions in Georgia. That said, what do you think the biggest threats are out there right now?
Well, look, when it comes to cyber, obviously we've got huge nation-state threats. We've got countries like China that's continuing to seek American intellectual property, Iran, North Korea, hard to deter, and Russia still actively looking to manipulate the U.S. electoral system, not necessarily for outcomes, but to create dissension in our ranks. So while they may not have gotten involved in this election, there's still the possibility of 2020. We need to be constantly vigilant of that. And what that means is companies and industry have to come together with the government, work together, create collective defense systems both at home and abroad, working with our allies. A lot of work to do here. Important that we work together in a collective way to find a solid path forward.
What kind of threats from Russia specifically do you think we should be watching out for? I mean, how do you imagine they might change their tactics going into 2020?
Well, look, we've revealed a lot about what we know. We revealed that we were inside some of their systems identifying these communications between some of the actors. We knew what was going on. They're going to be a lot more cautious about what they do. They're going to be sharper on how they act. But they're still going to try and mess with our elections. And frankly, they want to be known to do that. Part of what this is about is not just messing with our electoral system and our confidence in our institutions, but it's making Russia look bigger and more powerful than it actually is. Its economy is not strong. It is not in a good place internationally, but it's looking like a bigger player by monkeying with us and making our own politicians sort of go at each other's throats. And that's something we need to avoid as a nation. We need to work together in a bipartisan way to address these threats.
Jamil Jaffer, George Mason University. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks, Emily.
Coming up, how global luxury brands are preparing for Brexit ahead of a busy holiday season. That's next. This is Bloomberg. It's been a tough second half of the year for global luxury brands. The S&P index that tracks the 80 largest publicly traded luxury companies is down more than 5% since January. They've been contending with a slowdown in China, a trade war, along with the secular shifts we are seeing in retailer. And in the UK, there's another big potential disruptive force. That is Brexit. Bloomberg's Emma Chandra spoke with Harrods managing director about preparing for Brexit and how he is continuing to draw people through Harrods doors.
Everything we do now is experiential.
It's not just about buying products.
It's not about the product. It is about exclusive product. It's about unique product. But it's also about the relationship with you build.
So experience is really at the heart of Harrods' value proposition. Would you say it's what differentiates you from other big department stores?
It's absolutely what differentiates us. And there's two or three other things, really. It's that retail experience. Walking into something and just looking at the beautiful areas and almost having a look of wonderment. And the third is service. I think people have forgotten that it's actually a privilege to serve customers, and we teach our people within Harrods that it is a privilege to serve. And it's that relationship that customer then builds, because really good services is not very often these days.
And to that end, you're actually investing more than $200 million in store redevelopment. How is that going to help enhance the experience and actually in the end to drive sales, which is very important?
Well, I'll give you a good example in beauty. We're doubling the size of beauty, and we're already the biggest beauty door in the world. But one of the things that we'll be doing as part of it, we'll be putting almost a theatre which has got television recording rights in it. So that when we have the owner and developer of a brand with makeup artists actually on the stage with our customers, with an audience of people who want to learn how to create that look. And then we put it on social media, we put it throughout the store. So it's about building that look for that customer, because the product is becoming secondary. It's about how do you look amazing.
But the beauty product, I guess, is something that is more inclusive as well for a Harrods customer, because price points, while still high, they're lower than other things that Harrods might sell.
And that's why we're investing so heavily. It's the entry point into beauty. If I look at millennials are about 18.5% of the European customer and about 31% of the Chinese. 33% of our customers in beauty are millennials. And it's how do you build that relationship and then move them from the beauty products into the luxury products.
Let's discuss luxury more broadly, as you're also the chairman of Walpole. That's the UK sector body for the luxury retailing industry. Now, 80% of what the British luxury sector produces actually goes for export. Now, whilst luxury is slightly more insulated from some of the other disruptive factors we've talked about in retail, there is one big disruptor when it comes for British luxury, and we're talking about Brexit. How well prepared is the sector for Brexit, and what could be the prospect of a no deal?
I think that the sector's reasonably well prepared, but we've still got a lot of unanswered questions, and until those questions are answered, you can't put those final places into the planning. And part of it is still about logistics. How do we get product to customer? We've just done a promotion with Dior, which was unbelievably successful. Every day we was getting handbags sent from Paris because it was so successful. We won't be able to do that under Brexit. So the redefining of our supply chain is really very important. But British luxury is very adaptable. We're used to all of these things and we adapt very quickly.
Well, how are you adapting, though, when you look at things specifically like supply chain issues?
At the moment, we're putting in extra stock to make sure we go through the initial cushion. And then we'll see how that actual plays out over the course of the next 12 months.
Are you worried that it could be detrimental for Harrods as well as the broader luxury market?
I don't think it'll be detrimental to us. I think we'll be able to weather the storm. Actually, March is a good time for the fashion industry because we've had a 100% drop of our product for new season. So it's really only continuity. So we'll be in a good position. And as I say, luxury has been this amazing barometer throughout the whole of the world, that we've weathered all of these storms. I mean, everybody told us 6 years ago, luxury is dying, luxury. It isn't. It's still in phenomenal growth.
And we're talking about the rest of the world. We are here in the US. You're here as part of the annual delegation with Walpole. How important then is the US to British luxury retailers?
If I look at the Walpole membership, 3/4 identified America as being the place where they wanted really to develop and grow their business. And British brands have got this a fantastic alignment with what we call soft power. The traditions of Britain. So following on from the Crown, everybody wants a little bit of Britain, and that's bringing the luxury brands to New York, labels them to showcase it, and everybody get that little bit of Britain.
That was Harrods Managing Director Michael Ward with Bloomberg's Emma Chandra. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. As always, you can check us out at Technology. And be sure to follow our global breaking news network, TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg.